Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and now it's one of the big ones, the top 50 best songs of 2023. You know, when you've been making these lists long enough, and you've acknowledged that this list in particular is often the most personal, and you've also said in the last video that this has been kind of a complicated year for you, you would think a list like this might be paradoxically easy to put together in gravitating to the art that provides the most direct relief, even if you know you're never going to be able to fully explain all of that. And yet, with 2023, while the top of this list fell out very quickly, say top 20 or so, the rest of this was surprisingly difficult to assemble, and I think I'm still processing why that is. I said last year that 2022 had a set of transcendent songs that just leapt off the page in comparison with the albums. I think that's less true this year. The album list as a whole feels a lot stronger in 2023, we'll get to all that soon. But moreover, the songs list feels less consistent because of certain atomized moments. Some of these cuts individually would have owned my attention, but not really in aggregate. In other words, to make this more clear, it was really hard for me to have a consistent 2023 playlist I could just put on and unabashedly enjoy front to back without acknowledging that chunks of it are associated with complicated times, tied to very specific memories that I cannot leave off in good faith, but it can be kind of difficult to revisit. And of course, this was complicated by a couple too many albums that had so many fantastic songs, but I did keep to my rule, only 3 per album, and that's consistent across my entire personal top 100. If you want to see 100 to 51, check my social media. I don't know, maybe in 2024 I need to run a little more, get a few more tracks full of blood-pumping endorphins to get the people going than the slapdash mess that this list is. But I'd also prefer to be honest than to have whatever bad societal approximation attempting a veneer of cool that passes for taste anyway. And that's kind of ironic in its own way, because they're going to start off with
colorful packaging, pack 'em in, fly like gold on Africans, cover my tracks with backronyms. If the track slaps in the back, you can almost hear the black cackling. When it's my time, no need to pass the hat, just throw me in with the fire good and crackling.
Billy Woods had a banner year in 2023, and this is probably the solo cut I liked the most, although there's probably at least 5 songs on Maps that could have qualified. It was just one of those albums. And Kenny Siegel's production is top-notch. The dreary keys, ever so slightly off-kilter as the drums have such incredibly crisp texture, but Woods' wry observations really put this one over the top for me, as his travelogue will take him to Los Angeles as he observes what's getting sold, because it's not just weed that's getting overhyped in flashy packaging to reveal a lot of trash underneath, with the markup because he's a rapper, especially as he knows that all of it gets smoked in the end anyway. The wry, dark humor and a lot of the double meanings, it lends this song such a real distinctive texture. As someone who doesn't even smoke, I can still pick up on some of those subtle scorch marks.
Why don't you come over? Red wine supernova falling into me. Let's pick it up now.
My god, this song is ridiculous in all the best ways. Chappell Roan is getting a lot of well-deserved credit for her long-awaited star-making pop debut in 2023, mostly because she unabashedly embraces pop camp in a gloriously queer bedroom romp. The acoustic gallop around the ragged, wiry synths already builds into this deliriously horny energy, but it doesn't play coy or sultry or intense. This is unabashedly joyful, the sort of song where the sex is wild, kinky, and goddamn fun, running on pure theater kid energy, and for once that's a compliment. Chappell Roan does have her serious side, you'll see it soon enough, but when the debauchery sounds this playful, I think you gotta indulge. Yes, I know, I can nitpick the production on all of this. It seems to sound better the worse your system is, car tested to an absolute fault, but it's also probably the most I've enjoyed a song by the Foo Fighters in more than a decade, and it has only grown on me since I reviewed it solo on my Instagram and TikTok. In confronting the grief of Taylor Hawkins' death, this is a cut that is struggling to move forward, but also captures that communal release and attempting to swing for the fences one more time as Dave Grohl just howls his lungs out here. Now, without that context, it would just be classic Foo Fighters delivering another anthem, but maybe that's all it needs to be for some of that grief to burn away.
All in all, it's the same condition going around that you can't erase. You're reaching out to the undead hand that you will have to police or praise you.
The part of me that's in awe of this song, featuring the sort of collaboration that might as well be a YouTube music nerd's dream by adding Billy Woods and Backwash to an Algiers song. I mean, that would just be enough to qualify for this list on its own. But this is the posse cut that aims higher, even beyond letting Franklin James Fisher showcase his own tangible rapping skills. And when I say that, I mean more than just the production, that stalking trap beat that switches into this crushing, explosive shudder from Backwash's verse, to say nothing of the operatic swell behind that hook. No, I mean thematically here, because this is explicitly a critique of systemic oppression, not just of well-meaning white liberals that'll never challenge it, but also one's own desire to buy in and cooperate, the poison against which you have to bite back. And while Billy Woods' verse is that warning, the nightmare that your existence is within someone else's dream, Backwash's verse is the brutal reality for those who are ostracized for being on the fringe in which violence might be the only answer. It is a monster of a song that's honestly kind of difficult to revisit, but let's be real, it has to be.
1001 perpetual love songs, while 1001 stars fall from the sky. I watch 1001 nights turn into birdsong. I wish 1001 times that you were mine.
I'll admit it's utter whiplash from that song to this, but Angel Electronics capture queer, love-struck yearnings so effectively with this blur of happy hardcore and synth pop, especially tinged with the regret that it all blew up in their face the first time and they want to reconcile. But I do think it's that wheedling synth hook blurred into the pulsating tremolo guitar line, that bouncy bass, and how the percussion even picks up some clanking presence to accent that pre-chorus so effectively. It's damn near pop-punk and how goddamn catchy this is, especially in the subtle vocal interplay. It's euphoric. I got to Angel Electronics way too late in 2023. This is a total gem, so much fun.
And the world just keeps on spinning, so find a hand for holding on, 'cause we're all just walking each other home.
And you know, speaking of great underrated surprises, Dierks Bentley's album this year was way better than it had any right to be, and quite frankly got slept on by mainstream and indie country fans alike. I went with this as my favorite deep cut, and I'll admit it had a bit of an uphill battle. Songs about coming together and finding common ground. They get pushed by Nashville all the goddamn time these days, and most often they feel like pablum, but Dierks Bentley gets that differences in background, life, and one's path, they should be acknowledged. The misadventures, they're gonna happen, but they're just better with someone along the way for the ride. And the detailed homespun optimism is a really nice touch, especially with the references to Jack Kerouac and Shel Silverstein, the latter who, fun fact, actually did write country songs. Backed up with terrifically warm acoustics and a really big hook, this one got under my skin very early, wound up as one of my biggest comfort listens of the year. Gotta respect that.
Before the first light,
okay, look, I really wanted Unreal Unearthed to work for me as a whole. It's certainly ambitious enough in retelling so much of Dante's Inferno, just the atmosphere never fully coalesced to nail that darkness, that implacable cosmic presence, except for a few moments. And First Light is the sort of closer that goes for broke and feels biblical. The arrangement of acoustic strings and choral vocals swing for the fences. Hozier belts like he's erupted out of the other side of hell, and even the touches of synth and woodwinds work to create that ethereal explosion. Hozier has described the song as a reconciliation, and if that is the case, it's the sort where the heart sings its freedom upon that sunrise. I might personally prefer Hozier's snarled and sleazier side, but this, it's glorious.
So let go. You don't know better than your heart knows. Whether they're here or long gone, or we love who we love. Yeah, we love who we love.
I don't know what it is with Ed Sheeran showing up on these gently synthetic pop ballads that just work for me way better than they probably should. But here he is. He shows up on the earnest closer of Sam Smith's woefully uneven album this year and delivers a truly gorgeous song that does feel like Sheeran had more of a hand in the writing process. But it also feels very queer and very lived in despite its formalism. Borderline normcore, but you know what? They shouldn't be excluded from that beauty. But really, the reason I love this song, the oblique harmonies, and frankly a shocking amount of chemistry between Sam Smith and Ed Sheeran. They sound terrific together against the padded keys. It is utterly beautiful. Whereas on the flip side,
Did you ever love a woman with a death wish? Something in her eyes like flipping off a light switch. Everybody dies, but you gotta find a reason to carry on.
for everyone's sake, I'm not going to go into too much detail with this one, beyond the fact that Jason Isbell writing so explicitly about being in love with someone with depression and the self-destructive instincts. It's made to feel so goddamn raw and personal with the jagged rattle of the grooves and the guitars. It feels damn near post-punk, almost treading towards goth. And for Isbell to open the album with such a mingled blur of exhausted frustration and genuine terror, it's daring as all hell. The second I heard this song this spring, I knew it was going to make this list because, well, if you know, you know. Okay, bit of a breather, thank God, and we have probably the most gloriously silly song on this list, as Messerthim delivered a towering, spacey black metal opus as a sequel to the EP Type 3. Does it have multiple parts on its nearly 17-minute runtime with a killer melodic motif at the core, shrouded by swells of organ, grand symphonic orchestration, wiry synths that damn near hit dance territory with drum machine breakdowns, hellish howls, multiple wild crescendos, and when it feels like it can't get any more epic, there's a goddamn key change? You better damn believe it. I'm not sure if this is one of the longest songs to ever reach one of my year-end lists, but when you got ear candy that'll take you between the stars, hell yeah, kick ass.
The storm will come, but best believe the sun will shine. So if we put up a fight, everything will be just fine.
This is probably going to be my most contentious inclusion on this list, and I'll be blunt, it's not here because of No Name at all. She doesn't want a platform in 2023. For everyone's sake, I can probably oblige her that. Truth be told, she's also barely here beyond the first verse where she speaks about that revolution and decolonization, where Silk Money is more than happy to push as well with his freewheeling provocation, and I mean that line about the Fugees is just amazing, especially given all the respectability politics implications around their projects, and I just love how Stout provides that gorgeous hook with the pianos and the bassy scratch of the groove. But I also think Billy Woods steals the show here, with his verse providing a strikingly detailed picture of a rally during the Zimbabwe War of Independence, where the socialist revolution was initially successful, but he ends his verse observing child soldiers holding long guns amidst all of that black joy, highlighting the very real human cost of such liberation moments that tends to get lost in the hype, especially online in the Western world, especially if you know what followed in Zimbabwe in the decades to come. It's not a refutation of the movement or the politics so much as, well, acknowledgement of realpolitik. The reason the song title has a question mark is because it cannot just be blind adherence to doctrine or avoidance of real consequences. I wish the rest of No Name's album held up as well as this song did, or, you know, more folks grasp the nuance.
Go on and take me with you wherever you are. I hope I live on the road, in the town, in your heart. I hope I live on the road, in the town, in your heart.
This might be the closest that Lori McKenna has gotten to Heartland rock in years, if not her career. I'm a little shocked it's a single. The sharper acoustics, that grittier electric guitar, the more aggressive tempo, even her delivery. And you know what? That kind of makes sense for a song where she was left behind in that dilapidated small town by someone who took off to chase their dreams or run from their demons, where she prays that at least a part of her might have stuck with them because for her, they will always be there deep down, but also just out of reach. She's wise enough to know that we never truly escape all our demons, but she just prays there's enough of her presence that might help beat back that nightmare, whether it's an ex-lover or one of her kids leaving home. The anxiety rings forth so strong. And look, I've been telling y'all for years now that Lori McKenna is criminally underrated since 2016. I'm not gonna stop saying it. This rules.
If you leave me now, oh, the storms will roll, easy come, hard go, then life goes on.
Oh, would that this had been a proper hit, and if Asylum and Atlantic had gotten their shit together, and for some sort of radio promotion, it very well could have been. Luke Combs is having his best year to date, and showing up with a note-perfect guest remix from Ed Sheeran. This could have ruled adult alternative radio for years. They left money on the table. Sadly, it didn't happen, but not for lack of a great song. On an album that's struggling with grief and trying to move forward, Life Goes On gets to all that angst and anger, but also the exhausted sigh. We gotta keep moving. And Luke Combs' more weathered delivery adds a camaraderie that just pushes it into a different tier, because that togetherness is important. Yes, I know it means Ed Sheeran made this list multiple times in 2023. I'm not about to apologize for that.
I used to walk into the room, head down, I don't walk, now I float on my floor, on this club, lay hanging on to that goose down in my cup, float on my floor, on just float, I don't step, I don't walk, I don't dance, I just float.
And speaking of no apologies, I know Janelle Mon isn't gonna get any for their loosest, brightest, and most playful project of their career, but at least for this song, they absolutely should. A glorious trap-inflected R&B cut that's so freewheeling, confident, unabashedly queer, and kinky to boot. The Shibari line came out of left field, but it makes so much sense, I love it. And it still has some of those spacey, psychedelic synth touches to support all the rich horns, but it's the translation of what was just subtext from previous albums into organic text for so much humid swing here. That's what makes it work. If there's an artist who earned their summer ego trip, it is Janelle Mon. My God, Float is just joyous.
She's the daughter of a billionaire. She's the daughter of a billionaire. Why don't we all be on our best behavior when she comes back around, she comes back around.
I'm a little stunned how well Underscores worked for me this year, but I think Old Money Bitch was the moment that really crystallized the demented noise pop, hyperpop appeal in what might be one of the most shockingly nuanced explorations of class divide you will see this year, pressed through the nightmare fuel of teenage melodrama. The twang of the banjo ricocheting off the choppy synths and all the distortion, the snide attitude taking potshots at the girl who grew up with Old Money and hates how it has ostracized her given, well, late capitalism and a lot of warping values towards the ultra-wealthy, which play both obsequious and menacing towards her, especially as that class status appears to be precarious. She's just like us now, and as much as she tried to fit in, newfound class solidarity does not penetrate monstrous teenage melodrama. The inclusion of that good luck producer tag has never felt so nightmarish, and when you know the context of the album, that the girl doing all the mocking of her also comes from money, none of which either of them made themselves. For the record, I'm kind of left in awe of how goddamn twisted it all is. Underscores did a phenomenal job painting this world this year on Wall Socket. This was my favorite song, and if it got under your skin, well, let me say this. Y'all don't even know how close Johnny was to landing on this list as well.
You gotta shed that fear of passing away in order to live your life every day. You gotta shed that fear of passing away in order to live your life the right way.
Yes, it's a very late arrival, but one I did not want to miss. It probably reminds me the most of Living Each Day by Kieran J. Callanan back from 2017, where you hit rock bottom, but it provides its own perverse freedom to look up on the bright side, choosing to live despite all the odds. And when it's this irrepressibly catchy, it's really goddamn hard to complain. And I love the texture of the song. I love how it grows. The watery synths that build against the cymbals and the drums that ramp up, nourished by Time's much smoother, soulful vocals, layering his slightly askew harmonies. They remind me of the kookiest of mid to late 80s R&B, and when that hook, it doesn't quite soar, but in the reality of the circumstance, it probably wouldn't, even before the humid sound collage of the outro. It's little victories, you know? It's so goddamn charming, and the moment in which I knew that Nourished by Time had tapped into something really special, probably missed it this year, please give this person a shot.
Body count higher than a mosquito. With the body count higher than a mosquito.
Look, I'm not gonna say that Model Actress made the horniest album this year, but with this quaking fusion of noise rock and dance punk with a discordant jangle of keys behind that pummeling groove, Cole Hayden doing his best breathy Jamie Stewart impression, especially around the bridge as those deeper drums really ramp up and leave the mix shuddering in a soaking blur of bodily fluids. In my list of my favorite hits of 2023, I said that SZA's Low, it's not a song that makes love, it fucks, but frankly, this is on a different level. It's queer, it's kinky, where every elegant quiver is juxtaposed with fleshy impact. I mean, someone needs to connect these guys with Perfume Genius. I think they would find a lot of common ground.
Knee deep in the passenger seat and you're eating me out. Is it casual now? 2 weeks and your mom invites me to her house in Long Beach. Is it casual now?
And speaking of songs that feel incredibly sexual, almost to the point of discomfort, well, Chappell Roan takes it in a different direction, with a very different brand of emotionality, because it's not just a casual hookup for her, and as much as her partner is eating her out in the backseat of a car, alongside then getting introduced to friends and family, she recognizes that there are more stakes now at play, and frankly, she wants the recognition. Honestly, it's just kind of heartbreaking against the gentle elegance of the glittery synth with some really nice drum work behind it. On some level, Chappell Roan knows that she's getting strung along, as she imagines what their future could potentially be. Probably not the best idea for her, but in the meantime, might as well get the saddest orgasm, at least on this list.
Flip the switch and flick on the flame. Hold it like strawberry rain. Shake it, and put on the top. That's the way to make my bottle pop.
But again, on the topic of coincidentally ordered sex songs, I know a lot of folks have critiqued Jessie Ware for not having the same wild, organic flair as a lot of disco divas. She's a little too prim and elegant, a little too composed to get too wild. But frankly, if you want the gleaming refutation of that, it is Shake the Bottle. I love how she just runs through the guys that she nailed by name and makes it clear she is very hungry for more. I love how she just commits to the vamping to lean into pure camp, especially with some of those backing vocals. I love the coursing rollick of that groove and the horns that almost remind me of Grease by the Bee Gees in the best way possible, and all the sensual swing of that pre-chorus, it goes off. If there's a song where Jessie Ware earns her disco diva leopard print coat, it is this. Fantastic.
It's a long stretch of highway, but you better not go a mile over 45.
Okay, so we're gonna take a break from the sex songs for a bit for a stalking slow burn deep in the South, where a man maimed in a sawmill accident contemplates bloody revenge on the wealthy land baron who's taken over so much of the surrounding area that even if he's got some money now, it does not buy his freedom. Well, at least not for him. At the very bottom, guitars are very spare, the atmosphere is very dark, the subtle threat is palpable, and even if Jason Eady turns away from his character truly committing the crimes by the end, it's the implication. It lingers. I don't know if it's the darkest song he's ever written. There is a certain lived-in humanity to all of Jason Eady's writing that picks up this heaviness that can feel way more real than you might expect, but it certainly has the greatest menace. Again, the implication.
Stop scaring hoes. Play that shit out and touch their toes. We don't wanna hear that red shit no more. What the fuck is that? Give me the Mars code. Stop scaring the hoes. Play that shit out and touch their toes. We don't wanna hear that red shit no more. What the fuck is that? Give me the Mars code.
Kind of ironic then to follow with a song I don't find scary at all. And indeed, what makes Scaring the Hose so awesome? Because it's less fear than alienation of a status quo that prioritizes accessible commodification, of which neither JPEGMAFIA nor Danny Brown are remotely interested in delivering. They're not playing for the cheap scam. They're gonna make their money, but they're doing it their own way. Now that filthy saxophone and the clapping, their sample from Dirty Beaches produced that off-kilter, somewhat sleazy vibe. I mean, that clap could very easily sound like one's hand touching something else, if you catch my drift. And by extension, it highlights just how much they would be getting fucked by playing that industry game before getting discarded. Thankfully, this duo found a better way, and having seen Peggy sing this song live this year, hell, I reckon they'll be just fine.
Now you're clearing the room, just like Pontius Pilate when he showed all his home movies. All of his friends yelling Pilate too soon.
I remember seeing a lot of folks getting annoyed with this song online, saying, ugh, the new pornographers are getting political. I had to tilt my head sideways and wonder, has anyone been picking up on the subtext of this band the past decade plus? But the funny thing about this song is that they know the audience that's just looking to be entertained is going to be alienated by them going in this direction. That's the point. Part of this comes from a place of exhaustion, where you've spent so much time seeking respite, but your art can't help but reflect the increasingly grim reality. And when modern social media discourse surrounds and distorts what you put forward, it can feel even more bleak. Granted, this is also the new pornographers, and AC Newman and Nico Case put on a clinic with this track. The wailing horns, the ominous bass, that booming double kick behind the acoustic guitar. I had issues with a lot of the songs that the group self-produced this year, but quite frankly, this was undoubtedly a standout. Especially, you know, when it's really not too soon.
High and lonesome, hard and strong, even if it was a little attitude. Harder than socks on a Jersey jam. Lord, I thought you'd come to me.
If you know this song, you probably know that it was originally written by Tyler Childers, but he was never able to get an arrangement that fully worked for him outside of a brief window when he actually wrote it 10 years ago. So he let Elle King and only Elle King cover it, and she worked wonders. This is the sort of song that Elle King actually fits amazingly well, almost deliberately underplaying that gentle acoustic rollick with the occasional electric guitar flourish, full of mandolin and touches of accordion and fiddle and pedal steel, the sort of reminiscence of a reckless older days that's drenched in texture and detail with so much wild charm, the sort of song that feels like a staple in the making. Probably my favorite thing that Elle King has ever cut, where Tyler Childers himself has said, the song is hers now. And yeah, wow, something special.
If you want a cowboy on a white horse, riding out into the sunset, if that's the kind of love you wanna wait for, hold on tight, girl, I ain't there yet. No, I ain't there yet.
And speaking of songs written a decade ago, but now finally being brought to life, yeah, I already talked about this one on my list of the best hit songs of 2023, with a co-writing assist from Dan Wilson that just let Chris Stapleton deliver his best southern rock since, hell, probably his days with the Steel Drivers. It's roaring, it's anthemic, with a guitar solo that gets me every single time. No surprise this is here, but for a song that might actually surprise y'all.
When you know, you know. When you know, you know. It kinda makes me laugh. Running down that path when you're good as gold. 'Cause when you know, you know.
Hey, what can I say? When you know, you know. And no, this song is not just making my list because of Jack Antonoff's presence, singing about his now wife, for which this song is named, where he has to keep asking if whether that person's the one, they aren't that person. If you know, you know. And yes, I do love the touches of horns and gentle orchestration that are so impeccably Bleachers. But the emotional core of this, it's with Lana Del Rey. I think there's genuine nuance in her delivery, both in the real joy of seeing a dear friend get married to someone who is not Lena Dunham, but there's also this sense of loneliness and genuine ache beneath this song as someone who hasn't found their special someone just yet. And from what I've read in the interviews this year, she has really tried. I mean, I've always thought this song is one of her best, but when you yourself are single in your 30s and you go to 2 weddings on back-to-back weekends, well, again, if you know, you know.
Put it down to a sugar rush. You know way back in war time you'd be my common law wife, but for now it's just the 2 of us. And I've never felt such freedom in my life. Sat by your side inside.
Discovering Hamish Hawk in 2023 was a truly great pleasure for me, and this deep cut duet with Samantha Crane is such a delight, mostly because of how tired and kind of exasperated it is. It is a love song to be sure, but it's no grand romantic gesture so much as a deeply insecure artist trying to find some solace with a long-suffering partner who is probably being entirely too patient and helping him get his shit together. It kind of reminds me of how someone like Alex Cameron writes relationships in all of their distinctly flawed humanity, and when that pedal steel keens over the gentle soft rock groove that would normally play things with a little bit more firm, established control, there's this threadbare charm to this deep cut that only knocked it up higher in my rotation. Real sleeper hit. Absolutely adore it.
Oh, there's your face in the crowd again. I see you all over town. It's like there must be a dozens of you, but just for me and lately she's breaking down.
At this point, Dessa spent years dodging the conversation, failing to move on from one of the loves of her life. The conflict was central in the themes and subtext of Chime, and her grossly underrated album this year, it was all about deflection. Burying the lead. Now, this song takes her more towards pop than rap music, and it suits how her voice can play to some of those moments that feel deliberately smaller, as she keeps trying to avoid the sex, and yet she keeps seeing him, and realizing not only will she have to come to grips with that original reality that she will probably encounter him, but also how this stress is leaving her on the edge of a breakdown. And it's a sort of realization that does not feel climactic, but it kind of is. The subtle bassy patter, the reverb guitars, the gauzy synths, the sleigh bells on the bridge, that subtle piano flourish I really liked on the second verse. Or hell, maybe it's just the line, Oreos and bourbon. I rent a movie and I watch it in bed. Woman after my own heart.
Gave your name as my emergency phone call, honey, yeah. Ring and ring, even the cops thought you were on for hanging up. Hot dial drunk, I'll die for you.
Yes, I know, I'm as exasperated that this song is as high on my list as anyone, but gotta be honest with myself. I've already gone into this one at length as well on my list of the best hits of 2023. I'm still nearly convinced it'll be the best song that either man will ever make, and I'm gonna stand by the karaoke staple that provided to be the cleanse that I needed. Again, not to get into a lot of detail, but I didn't dial drunk this year, and man, grateful for it. Frankly, I knew this was going to make my list off that piano line alone. The sort of utterly uncomplicated disco jam where Jessie Ware allows herself to cut loose, and my god, she sells it. But when you also add in the gentle rollick of percussion around that bass line that knows how to precisely ramp into the drums, the swells of backing vocals where you can hear the occasional joyous laugh cut through, that bridge change up, even some of the sharper synths that add some blaring klaxon-like presence around the arranged horns, it's where the elegance gets a little wilder, and I found it utterly infectious. Still, again, not the last time we'll see Jessie Ware on this list, but when it's this much fun, I can't complain.
At the ready with a dance or two still left in me, wager that it won't appear that I forgot who brought me.
No joke. As of a couple days ago, my favorite karaoke DJ in my city got this in his system. I'm not saying that guaranteed Evan Felker's band would notch an entry off their long-awaited new album that, quite frankly, didn't live up to everyone's expectations, but Brought Me is one of their best singles by a mile. Some have highlighted that this song could easily stand for the Turnpike Troubadours fan base given their tumultuous last couple of years, but quite frankly, it's more likely intended for Felker's wife, Stacy, for whom he remarried after conflict and his addictions drove him apart. But in both cases, the song picks up the weight of that history with probably one of their best ever hooks. I love the fiddle and the accordion having the room to breathe with some terrific interplay with the lead guitar and the pedal steel, and again, the chorus is built to belt out over a crowded bar. About damn time Turnpike is back. They brought one of their best. I know there's been a lot of discourse around the nascent shoegaze revival the past couple of years that I personally don't feel well equipped to fully contextualize. I also know there's some discourse around Slowdive and their album venturing even further away from the sounds that made them, especially as someone who got into them very late when they came back, and I didn't exactly love that comeback album. But quite frankly, none of that matters, because when I was driving to the airport in Connecticut to come home from one of those weddings, all through the drizzly haze of that humid morning, this was the song that captured a certain misty mystique off the reverb guitars and the gentle hook that before I had noticed it, I'd replayed it a dozen times, capturing that note-perfect, love-sick melancholy in which this band has always gotten right. I did not expect that Slowdive would have made one of my favorite pop songs of 2023, but this, damn near undeniable.
I'm letting my bad imagination get the best of me, lost in a daydream.
So, again, for everyone's sake, I cannot go into a lot of detail why for a specific segment of this year, this was a song I clung to. The sort of long, meditative indie country with spare atmospheric guitars in the cajon, and Sunday Best proving, once again, they got an underrated skill for ballads, all about fighting against that little voice in your head that second guesses a good thing or a good person in your life, where you wind up catastrophizing for all of the wrong reasons. Now, there are times where that little voice, it's absolutely right for different reasons, which is why after a certain point this year, this song did get a little less play, but in confronting one's own complicated insecurity within a relationship, I'm not sure there's much better.
Swear you'll save the world when I lose my grip. Tell me you're in control. Swear you'll save the world when I start to slip. 'Cause you'll be the first to know.
I think Jason Isbell realized at some point in the late 2010s, maybe 2020, that while his political material was righteous, it wasn't always connecting as strongly as he would want with the audience that he wanted. So not only does the curdling boil of the organ and the electric guitar build to a masterclass of desperate tension, the framing of this song shifts as well. It's a song about gun violence that does not speak from the pulpit or could be seen as exploiting all of it for a platform, but from a parent on edge when he thinks about his kids, the police system that has increasingly failed to protect them, and the fact that he might have some of the privilege to provide some protection, but that's not really the long-term answer either. And finally, to the next generation, that they might be able to fix everything where his generation has categorically, unmistakably, damn near criminally failed, praying that if they can't regulate evil, they can at least provide a little bit more relief than those who would just believe in absolutes and do nothing. Also, the guitar solo is absolutely stellar. It's not the primary point, needs to be said anyway.
You said don't ever eat the acid if you don't wanna be changed like it changed me. You said all the edges got so jagged, now everything you saw then can't be unseen. Last night I saw it all.
This song was my introduction to Kesha's Gag Order, produced by Rick Rubin. I'm still a little in awe of it, reminiscent of the old psychedelic folk music where the darker edge and the cosmic expanse are both in frame, centered in the warning from her mother to never take acid because it'll irrevocably change your brain chemistry. You will see things that you will never be able to forget. And the sound palette is unlike few things I heard this year. Frankly, and unlike few things I've ever heard. The filmy touches of acoustics, the mournful synth, the shifting vocal fidelities and the harmonies, just how haunted it all feels. If you know what Kesha's been through, you can tell she is seeking that answer, the temptation to find something in that mind-expanding face that might help, well, anything. Put this on a playlist within Lacing by Clipping of songs that might make you curious to do a tab when you're listening, but also might break your brain in the process. Okay, yeah, probably the easiest choice for a Jessie Ware song to place this high. It's already received plenty of critical acclaim for the lush, opulent mix, calling back to the golden age of disco and the yearning to start over and find something that's better than this dry reality filtered through machines. Apparently, this song did originate in the pandemic. I believe it. Jessie Ware sounds like she just wants to cut loose and has a gentle patter of percussion in the acoustic rollick that translates into this loose, funky guitar lick, ramps up behind all the layered vocals, the pianos, and the swells of strings and horns that hit climax after climax, especially given all that otherworldly swell building into that outro. It's an utterly stunning song. Easy the centerpiece of the album, and by far my favorite to date. So, I have been open about the fact that despite her experimentation and a lot of her downstream impact, I just never got Sophie the way that so many people did. I just never loved the mixing and mastering of her production. It only ever clicked for me sporadically, and her tragic passing way too young, way too soon, left me at kind of a distance to fully get it. Then Carolyn Polachek made a tribute song to her that continues to blow my goddamn mind, and even if I will never fully grasp Sophie's sound, this helped me get the emotional weight and the impact. This track soars with so much ethereal presence that the reference to Celine Dion makes all the goddamn sense in the world, but the texture here is different. The orchestra hits, the whistle notes, that dramatic climax, it's calling for a diva presence that feels out of this world that even I got that Carolyn Polachek and Sophie understood. I will always love Polachek's ridiculous vocal presence. It reminds me of Imogen Heap with the volume cranked up to 11, but when you pair it with a shuffling drum and bass groove and the sheer yearning swell, I get it. I finally get it.
Just trying to make it to the end of the world and stay alive out of spite. Stay alive out of spite.
Stay Alive Out of Spite might be one of the most searing lyrics of 2023. It is also rooted in the pandemic years, but I don't think it's gonna go out of style anytime soon, as Dylan Slocum bellows out over waves of guitar and ragged synth and galloping drums as he sees someone discover the roots of their own self-loathing, but not succumb to it. I mean, he cares and it all hurts, but fuck it. If everything's collapsing both internally and externally, he's gonna give it all the double bird and keep on fucking living. He doesn't live in blissful ignorance or the self-help irony because he can't. And god damn it if that dread does not wear heavy, but if pure punk spite keeps him moving, at least for a little while, it is worth it. It's ethereal but kinetic and a rager all the same, and I unabashedly adore that double clap on the second verse. And yeah, I can marvel at that.
I will always love you, but I cannot love you. I will always love you.
How dare you? How fucking dare you do this? Actually give the beauty a foundation of tangible organic weight that doesn't feel overarranged and whinging and oversold and all the other reasons that Javelin felt twee and cloying and drippy and drowning in worship music pageantry. And look, I try to be generous talking about Javelin when I reviewed it. Frankly, it's only gotten worse every listen since. The electronics, the maximalist aesthetic, they doesn't remotely work as well as it should, and do not get me started on how this album approaches its subtext and its coding. But for that penultimate song, it works. Fucking shit. The gentle framing only highlights the very human strife, the heartache, the desire to desperately cling to someone who is slipping away, whereas the bells and the drums and the backing vocals, they leave you wanting to curse every god on every plane. And it's not even when the choral vocals that came through the first time that leaves me swearing as violently every time. It's when the acoustics and the horns pile in as the orchestration builds a lot of its deeper swell before fading into that heavenly ambience. Fuck you, Sufjan Stevens. It's fucking beautiful, and I'm so sorry for your loss. The depth of that emotion created this.
Prairie dogs popping up to see that strawberry woman sitting next to me. Strawberry woman sitting next to me.
You know, I think this might be a love song closer to my speed right now. Easily my favorite Jason Isbell song this year, mostly because it feels like a culmination piece of his long-running story with Amanda Shires, tracing the growth of infatuation and love to growing to live with each other as you age, and that's not going to be easy, especially given that there's plenty of wild, stubborn pride to go around both of them. And it's clear that it is following in the wake of Death Wish, and it feels just as personal. Isbell has described this as the closest thing to nostalgia on the album. He's right. And that's always something that he's wanted to shun. He wants to add more context. But there is this tempered, lived-in dynamic that breaks the rose-colored glasses. Or hell, just the image of her dancing on the bar after it had closed with blood streaming down her nose having just done a line. Pair that with some great balance between the warm acoustics and the bass and the accordion and that stellar acoustic passage that ends the song. Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't want it any other way.
It's a hurricane party, end days every other Wednesday. Live girls dance, dead men float. A hurricane party, gold dust, checks and Bacardi. DJ says don't hold back because the water won't.
Okay, so let's move on to something considerably lighter on the docket. Oh, hey, Dessa decided to open up her album with a swaggering rap banger that sounds like it was delivered from the very end of the world. Getting her shredders on, I can see. And you know what, I do think that is an apt comparison. Laserbeak's production is pulsating and lean and wiry. Every line pops off with detail that she wryly observes the world careening out of control, where you might as well find a little bit of an escape in a hurricane party. But there's also more that can be conducted amidst the encroaching chaos and all the disasters. I love the Wizard of Oz references, which works best if you've actually read the original books, and you can tell Dessa has. I love how the political framing is decidedly outsider and recognizing how certain systems will attempt to preserve normalcy and finger point rather than actually solve anything. And how all the pop culture references, they feel impeccably modern and for the kids who know what has to be done. Yes, there is a part of me that wishes there was a little bit more hip-hop attitude on Bury the Lead as a whole. I'll take what I can get.
You got me
was the song that convinced me Amaarae might be able to work for me, even with all the baby voice cooing that's never been my thing. Credit to such a great R&B jam that it blew past all of my inbuilt bias. It works for a lot of similar reasons that Float did, but Amarae's taste in finer things actually has a purpose beyond just a flex. She is in her own space, trying to party, reveling in all that opulence, get faded, but there is someone so enticing to her that she's severely tempted to throw it all away, chase that person down. And what's interesting is the acknowledgement that this person does not love Amaarae at all, but is trying to play into her ego. And it's working. And Amaarae knows it's working, which is why the back and forth of the flirtatiousness is so effective. And with the humid roiling flutter paired with the Afrobeat percussion where the drama is only ramped up with that strings arrangement, which frankly came out of nowhere, and a truly stellar hook. I love those backing vocals. Oh yeah, this one hits.
You're not haunted, you just miss everything. You're not a ghost, so stop disappearing.
This was the first sign of the new Spanish love song album that it would be different than Brave Faces Everyone, but quite frankly, it did not take me long to convince me that their pivot towards indie rock was worth it in spades. The jangling grooves, the gauzy synth textures, Dylan Slocum's delivery that's just as powerful when he's singing compared to his shouting, but it was the content that stuck with me so powerfully, where he is trying to help someone who is struggling so deep in the throes of their depression, but in the very real, mundane way, where the debilitating suicidal ideation is just a factor of their life in a world where he feels like he won't be missed. All the harder when the big earnest dreams did not pay off, with the explicit callback to Brave Faces Everyone showing that's more likely than not. But then someone does call. And there was a worry that he wouldn't pick up, but he did, and the outpouring of grief and relief at the end of the song is truly stark. There are other tracks on this list in which this feels thematically apropos. Make of that what you will.
Now the chorus and cover, I'm making sure remember it's Tyler forever. Tyler forever. Tyler forever. It's Tyler forever.
The ironic thing about this song is just how deceptively simple it is, until it's not. Because McKinley Dixon starts off making what could be the most opulent banger not made by Maybach Music Group, with the horns and the incredibly sharp track percussion, complete with a hook memorializing his late friend, and a verse that's as cutting as anything you'll hear in hip-hop this year, including bars at pretty much everyone who does this sort of gangland posturing. Kids with death on their lips. The metal references here are inspired, but then the song swerves into a gorgeous, slow-burning change-up, because McKinley Dixon knows this isn't him either, and his late friend would not want that. His friend knew the poets lied too. McKinley Dixon pulls back into meta-commentary about the mixed value that comes with making all those stories, to him and everyone, where he also knows the grim consequences of living that life, but he hopes for a little bit of escape, or hell, just his friend to be there and share with him. And if you want the song to introduce anyone to McKinley Dixon, well, Make a Poet Black is probably still first for me, but then I reckon it's this.
Just then I saw the risen king sitting in a boxing ring, and he was looking at me. I don't know what he was thinking, but I think I saw him winking, like he's thinking of me.
And here we have even more horns, a hook just as bombastic, and plenty of meta-commentary to boot. Only this time Hamish Hawk is placing himself near the annals of the grand performers like Elvis Presley, and feeling incredibly inadequate in the execution for the trouble, where it's not so much failure that wounds him, but disinterest that's puncturing the ego, and yet there are still glimpses of that half-formed glory that leads to a melodic hook that is frankly way more anthemic than it deserves to be. It's not the first time that Elvis was used as more of a hazy symbol of personal idolatry than focus on the man himself. PJ Harvey did a lot of it this year on her excellent album, but I liked how so much of it is left ambiguous, how much of it is just self-delusion, and really, how much of that is different than confidence anyway. I don't think I can detach this song from when I was in Barbados for Valentine's Day this year, and I was able to hit that soaring tropical vibe instantaneously, where if you needed a shot of raw ego straight to the base of the spine, this delivered, where Carolyn Polachek's clarion vocals begin breaking into a much more raw state even before hitting the whistle notes and near orgasmic vocal calls. And that's not me saying it, that's Polachek herself talking about the calls on that hook. The guitars, they pulse in the roar, the gleaming synths and vocoder on the verse build into that crescendo. Then comes the bridge, where she's trying to contextualize a very messy relationship that she had with her late father that never liked her pop music for feeling revolutionary enough, but he also couldn't live up to his own standards. Where if there is a warning here against ego, it is coaxed through hypocrisy and what you ultimately need to hold yourself together through all of that. And if there was a song of the summer for me, it was this. Spellbinding shit.
Save me, oh please God, I need your love now. Oh, save me, please God, I need your love now.
Kesha's gag order does a lot of things in seeking release and control or clarity or even just happiness, but this is the moment on the album where the slow burn project has to burn hot and fast. She returns to the sing-talking of her earliest work against the crushing bass and typewriter whirs and drum machines, but there's a different, darker edge to this. It's knowing that you have given it all and you've reached the end of your rope, where you know what you're supposed to say, but you're done playing nice, where you would kill to actually keep a secret about yourself, but at this point, freedom's all what really matters. You have no shame left, and goddamn anything that would stand in your way, built off a hook that is soaked in Southern Baptist gospel that pulverizes everything in its path. It's overwhelming, but in the way it needs to be. If you know, you know, where only a higher power can save anything, where even if Kesha will never get another proper mainstream hit, this is a banger among her absolute best.
Speaking of God-fearing folks in the pews, as the preacher gives the news, even Jesus has got the blues.
You know, if there was a song that I could play at any point in 2023 and put a big smile on my face, it was this one. The fiddles, the acoustic guitar, what could either be a mandolin or a banjo, impeccably warm and gentle and playing into the loose, wry humor that's always been Gabe Lee's standout with so many melodic hooks stacked so high. My God, the mix on this song is fantastic. But what I love even more is Gabe Lee's writing. He tends to write folks on the outskirts of society with not just humanity, but flavor and a lot of humor. He makes them people, where the girl dragging Gabe Lee for a ride might as well have come in from Ian No's Irene Raven Baum in both her angst, but also her wild desire to provoke and run free. And I love the central conceit of how this woman just scandalizes everyone in the church, but Gabe Lee also knows that Jesus ate and drank among the sinners, and will probably find more in common with her than anyone else there. Between this and 30 Seconds at a Time, I think Gabe Lee might write Jesus Christ better than anyone else currently working today in indie country. But this was so warm, so comforting, an incredibly easy listen, damn near my favorite country song of this year.
Okay, I see what you're doing. I done came up with the ruins. Never step up, it's eyes and ruins. Hey, going down like yeah. I'ma make it do what it do. I should do what I say. What I know, say.
Whereas this was a bruiser. The jock jam complete with crowd cheers, massive horns, and biblical samples that ESPN would not dare to license because it's also named after one of the most controversial and dirty players in modern NFL history. But that's the point. It's all provocation. It's all Danny Brown and JPEGMAFIA flexing on everything in their path. Gleefully unpredictable, punishingly raw, and also one of the most clear songs on the album, and you can make out everything that they're spitting. And for JPEGMAFIA, that means a lot of very loaded political lines as it rolls in this pure, filthy bravado and bombast. Again, I saw him do this live this year. It was bonkers, and that's before you get all the utterly hilarious bars, where you're left wondering what boundaries they will incinerate next. This was my workout anthem in 2023, easily my favorite rap song of this year, damn close to being the most easy song to enjoy this year.
5 in the morning and I thought CBD would not get me high. But here I am thinking, what if Michael Keaton killed himself in multiplicity? Would that be genocide?
It wasn't a breakup album. Well, not really. If anything, it was built more for one's recovery, piecing your own mess back together and continuing to move forward. And if there was an anthemic moment in all of the disaster, it was Michael Keaton, of which I have not seen on karaoke yet, and personally, that's a problem. It's easily Ruston Kelly's catchiest song to date, may even be his best. It shows him a little high and trying to console someone else who's going through a breakup to pull his shit together while contemplating if Michael Keaton killed himself in the 1996 movie Multiplicity, would that have been genocide? Now, to answer that rhetorical question, no, it would not have been, but it's also not the point, because you realize that whoever is crying might just be another version of Ruston Kelly, and he's seeing different aspects of himself in that room because that's what happens when it's 3:30 in the morning and you're unexpectedly high. And it's funny, and it's sad, and it's also righteously pissed off at having a bad trip spoiled. And yet there was a late afternoon in late April this year when I was walking away from the Toronto waterfront where I put on this song, and it was everything I needed to process the pain. A shaky half-formed step in the right direction, and to pair with it...
I was so distracted then, I didn't have it straight in my head. I didn't have my face on yet, or the role or the feel of where I was going with it all. I was suffering more than I let on. The tropic morning news was on. There's nothing stopping me now from saying all the painful parts out loud.
I said last year, talking about The Kingdom Is Within You by Gang of Youth, says sometimes you hear a song, and you know you're going to have to listen to it another 5 or 10 times in rapid succession because it is so special. It is so transcendent. You're not going to hear anything else like it. That every time you hear it, you find something new to love. Tropic Morning News is not that. But it is also so deeply personal to things that occurred in my life in 2023. Couldn't be anything else. Even beyond when I saw the National live at Osheaga, and midway through the song I got hit in the face with a water cannon. In terms of the sound, it is what the National's been doing for years. The unstable, slow burn crescendos, Matt Berringer's smoldering vocals that lead to a hook that just sticks and then finds new ways to build on itself, that roaring guitar solo that just goes off. But here, it's the content that's stuck, because it's a song mid-breakup, where there's this ocean of emotion that just beneath the surface, and you're trying to push it all out, but you're not quick enough on the draw to pull it forth properly, and it doesn't come out how you think, and you feel lost, you feel gaslit in a war of words that you didn't even want to fight. I mean, conversation doesn't have to be a competition. The title of the song alludes to social media doom scrolling, but let's be real, that's perfunctory overall, compared to the breakdown of that communication, the loss of control, the loss of chemistry, feeling like you're becoming a passenger in your own life and your own relationship, and you're suddenly unable to find that common ground you knew was there. And the line that's always stuck for me was, "You can stop and start an athlete's heart. How do I feel about it?" For a while, given that the National is from Cincinnati and the song was officially released after the incident, I thought it was a reference to the DeMar Hamlin game, the Bills-Bengals game that got canceled in January due to that accident. But they'd actually been performing the song earlier on tour in 2022. It's just a heartbreaking coincidence that it happened, but it also makes all the more sense in a song that highlights incidental moments that are disposable to one person in the partnership, but could have a profound emotional impact on the other. It's discombobulated, it's painful, it's where resolution is left ambiguous. I think Berringer had more luck than I did. Look, I've already said too much. I know there's going to be folks who write this off as just another song by the National, or maybe just a high-quality one in their catalog and not that special. I won't do that. I can't. To me, this wasn't just the best song of 2023, and I don't think it's particularly close. It's one I desperately needed. And thankfully, some way, somehow, things are rapidly improving. So, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I would be extremely grateful. Kinda tough to do promo after all that. Again, I'm amazed I held together for some of this. There are some parts in putting this together and even talking about it that's complicated. Again, I cannot go into details for everyone's sake involved, but again, if you know, you know, and I would want to be honest with what my opinion is, which again, all this is subjective. Leave your own list down there below. I'm curious what actually hits for you. But yeah, I would prefer to be honest with what I think is the best. And again, I feel all of this is very defensible. Even the stuff at the very top, even where my emotional engagement is higher. Because again, this is all subjective. And I think if something profoundly hits in that way, I can come back to this in 10 years probably and still say that Tropic Morning News is one of the best national songs in their catalog. Period. Now, I think I can say that now. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation? Again, leave your comments. I'd be very happy to hear them. Beyond that, if you guys want to get albums on my schedule for the upcoming year ahead, because this is going to be dropping probably on New Year's Day, presuming copyright doesn't screw me over. Again, the year is going to be opening up. I'm curious what y'all want me to cover, and the link to that is my Patreon right over there. Don't feel obligated, tough times, but you want to support the channel, want to get albums on my schedule, want to argue with me on Discord, options are available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.